Who the hell do you think you are? The cop's voice dripped with venom as he assaulted her. He saw a black woman who didn't know her place. He was about to learn she was an FBI agent sent to investigate him. The air in the federal courtroom was thick with the scent of old paper, stale coffee, and the low hum of institutional indifference. It was a place of beige walls and unflattering fluorescent lights, a stage where lives were methodically dismantled and reassembled according to statutes and precedents. Justice, here, was a slow, grinding machine. In the last row, a woman sat with a stillness that was a world apart from the fidgeting and anxious whispers around her. She was Dr. Nia Hayes, a mature, beautiful black woman whose very presence was a quiet rebellion against the room's drab monotony. She wore a tailored, bright red blazer, a slash of defiant color in a sea of gray and brown. The blazer was cut perfectly to her voluptuous, S-curve figure, hinting at the power and confidence she possessed. Beneath it, she wore a cream-colored silk blouse, and its buttons strained subtly against her full, E-cup bust. The top button was deliberately left undone, revealing the elegant curve of her collarbone and a hint of her ample cleavage. It was a look of bold, unapologetic femininity. She wasn't looking around. Her dark, intelligent eyes were fixed on the empty witness stand, her expression impassive, almost analytical. She could have been a scholar, a journalist, or a family member, but her composure was of a different quality entirely. It was the unnerving calm of someone who wasn't just observing the system but was there to weigh it, measure it, and find it wanting. Then, the side door swung open, and Officer Bryson Hale strode in. He moved like a man who owned the very floorboards he walked on. His uniform was crisp, his shoulders squared, and his eyes, cold and blue, swept the room with the practiced arrogance of a predator scanning his territory. He wasn't looking for criminals, he was looking for dissonance. He was hunting for anyone who didn't immediately shrink under his gaze, anyone who failed to display the proper mixture of fear and deference that his presence demanded. And his eyes found Nia Hayes. He saw her instantly. The bright red blazer was an affront. Her relaxed, yet poised, posture was an insult. He saw a black woman, dressed in a way he deemed too provocative for this hallowed space, sitting with a confidence he felt she hadn't earned. In his world, a world of rigid hierarchies and snap judgments, she was an error in the code, a disruption to the natural order of things. He saw her failure to tense up, to look away, to acknowledge his entrance, not as the calm of an uninvolved citizen, but as a direct challenge to his authority. A slow, toxic anger began to coil in his gut. He didn't know who she was, but he had already decided what she was, a problem. And he was the man who solved problems like her. The lull between hearings stretched on, the courtroom suspended in a state of bored anticipation. This was Hale's favorite time. It was when the formal structures of the court receded, and his own informal authority could expand to fill the space. He began his patrol, his boots making heavy, rhythmic clicks on the linoleum floor, each step a declaration of his importance. He walked past rows of people who dutifully avoided his gaze, but his path had only one destination. He stopped directly beside Nia's row, forcing her to either ignore him or look up. He loomed over her, a physical embodiment of the law's most intimidating aspects. He leaned in, his voice a low, menacing hiss meant only for her, yet loud enough for those nearby to catch. "I didn't see you stand when I entered the courtroom," he said. It was not a question. It was an accusation, the opening salvo in a battle he had already started in his mind. He expected a flinch, a stammered apology, a flurry of panicked excuses. It's what he always got. Nia finished her silent observation of the witness stand before slowly turning her head to face him. Her movement was fluid, unhurried, utterly devoid of fear. She met his cold, blue eyes with her own warm, brown ones. "I saw no reason to stand," she replied. Her voice was even, musical, and maddeningly calm. It held no defiance, no anger, no challenge. It was a simple statement of fact. The response hit Hale like a physical blow. It was so unexpected, so contrary to the script he was used to, that it short-circuited his brain. He had offered her a chance to submit, and she had simply refused to play the game. His mind, steeped in prejudice, scrambled for an explanation. He saw her expensive blazer, the hint of cleavage from her silk blouse, her confident posture, and it all coalesced into a single, ugly conclusion: she was arrogant. She thought she was better than him. His face tightened, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. "Is that so?" he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "This is a federal courtroom, ma'am, not a nightclub. There are rules of conduct here. Respect is mandatory." He was now performing for the people nearby, casting himself as the guardian of decorum and her as the disrespectful outsider. He was trying to bait her, to draw her into an argument he knew he could win by escalating to an official level. But Nia didn't bite. "I'm aware of where I am, officer," she said, her calm gaze unwavering. And that was what truly broke him. It was her refusal to be intimidated. Her composure was a mirror, and in it, he saw his own petty rage reflected back at him. He felt his authority, the very core of his identity, being questioned not by an argument, but by a black woman's simple refusal to be afraid of him. He needed to reassert control. He needed to make her feel the consequences of her disrespect. And he needed to do it now. Officer Hale's self-control shattered. The slow-burning anger exploded into a white-hot rage. In his mind, he was no longer just a police officer enforcing a rule, he was a warrior defending the very foundations of law and order from this insolent woman. He had to make an example of her. He had to show everyone in this room what happens when you disrespect the uniform. He abandoned all pretense of professional conduct. Without another word, he reached across the back of the empty seat in front of her and seized her arm. His grip was brutal, his fingers digging into her flesh with the force of a vice. A collective, sharp intake of breath rippled through the nearby rows. "On your feet," he snarled, his voice now a guttural growl. He yanked. Nia was torn from her seat with a force that sent her stumbling into the aisle. The elegant red blazer she wore was wrenched violently, the fabric creasing in protest. Her satchel slipped from her lap, hitting the floor with a muffled thud. For a split second, her body was a whirlwind of motion she didn't control, a puppet on the string of his fury. The courtroom, once buzzing with quiet murmurs, fell into a deep, shocked silence. Everyone stared. Lawyers paused their conversations. Clerks looked up from their paperwork. The defendants and their families watched, wide-eyed. This wasn't a contained dispute anymore, it was a public spectacle of raw power. Hale stood over her, his chest puffed out, his face flushed with triumph. He held her arm in a punishing grip, parading her humiliation for all to see. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he boomed, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. "Sitting there like that chair belongs to you? Like the rules don't apply to you?" He wasn't just accusing her of a minor infraction anymore. He was putting her on trial for her very existence in this space. His tirade was a vile slurry of all his prejudices, that a black woman, a beautiful woman, a well-dressed woman, had no right to be so confident, so calm, so present. Nia caught her balance, planting her feet firmly on the floor. Her face was a mask of stunned stillness, not of fear, but of profound, ice-cold clarity. The initial shock of the physical assault was already receding, replaced by something else, something hard and unyielding. The wrinkles on her red blazer were a testament to his violation, but her eyes, when she lifted them to meet his, were not the eyes of a victim. They were the eyes of a judge. And in them, Officer Bryson Hale, for the first time in his career, saw not a reflection of his power, but a premonition of his own downfall. The world seemed to slow down. The ambient noise of the courtroom faded into a distant hum. All that existed was the space between Officer Hale's furious, contorted face and Dr. Nia Hayes's shockingly calm one. His hand was still locked around her arm, a brand of his authority. He was waiting for her to break, to cry, to plead. She did none of those things. With her free hand, Nia slowly, almost languidly, reached inside her red blazer. Her movements were economical and precise, a stark contrast to his violent, jerky actions. It was the movement of a person who had rehearsed this 1,000 times, not in practice, but in principle. Hale watched, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Was she reaching for a phone? A weapon? She pulled out a simple, black leather wallet. It was not a designer brand, but it was made of fine, functional leather. It looked professional, serious. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence was now more powerful than his shouting had ever been. She held his gaze as she flipped the wallet open with a flick of her thumb. And then, the world froze. Under the harsh, sterile light of the courtroom, a small, golden badge gleamed with an authority that dwarfed his own. It was a shield, intricately detailed, with a proud eagle at its center. Engraved in bold, unmistakable letters were the 3 words that could stop a man's heart: Federal Bureau of Investigation. Beside the badge, behind a clear plastic window, was her ID card. The photo showed the same calm, intelligent face looking back at him. And beneath it, her name and title, Dr. Nia Hayes, Senior Special Agent, Office of Professional Responsibility. Internal Oversight. The realization hit Hale with the force of a physical impact. The blood drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, pale color. His mouth fell slightly open. His smug, triumphant expression dissolved into one of pure, unadulterated horror. The hand gripping Nia's arm suddenly felt like it was on fire. He had not just assaulted a citizen. He had assaulted a federal agent. Not just any agent, but an internal affairs agent, the kind of person cops like him had nightmares about. The kind of person who investigated cops like him for a living. His grip went slack. His fingers, which seconds ago had been digging into her skin, now felt numb and useless. He let go of her arm as if he had touched a live wire. He took a clumsy, involuntary step back, stumbling slightly. The entire courtroom was locked in a state of suspended animation. The silent onlookers, the clerks, the lawyers, they all saw it. They saw the badge. They saw the color drain from the officer's face. They saw the power in the room, as tangible as a physical object, transfer completely from the man in the blue uniform to the woman in the red blazer. Nia calmly folded her wallet and slipped it back into her blazer pocket. She adjusted the wrinkled fabric on her sleeve, a small, deliberate gesture of reclaiming her composure. She had not raised her voice. She had not fought back. She had simply revealed who she was. And in doing so, she had ended him. The silence that followed was different. It was no longer the silence of shock, it was the silence of dread. Officer Hale stood frozen, his face a canvas of disbelief and dawning panic. His entire world, built on a foundation of intimidation and assumed authority, had been demolished in less than 10 seconds. Dr. Nia Hayes' demeanor shifted. The impassive observer was gone. In her place was the senior special agent. Her voice, when she spoke, was no longer calm, it was cold, sharp, and carried the undeniable weight of federal power. It cut through the silence like a scalpel. "Officer Hale," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You are being placed under administrative leave, effective immediately, pending a federal investigation into assault, battery, and abuse of authority under color of law." She didn't look at him anymore. He had ceased to be a person and had become a case file. She pulled out her smartphone, her fingers moving swiftly across the screen. "This is Special Agent Hayes," she said into the phone, her voice crisp and official. "I have a Code 3 situation at the federal courthouse, room 4B. I need a forensics unit to document injuries and a 2-agent response team for subject detention. Now." The speed and confidence of her command sent a new wave of shock through the room. This wasn't a complaint to be filed later. This was happening right now. Hale's partner, Officer Vic, who had been standing by the wall like a silent statue, finally moved. He took a hesitant step forward, his face pale and confused. "Ma'am, maybe we can just..." Nia's eyes snapped to him, and her gaze was so sharp it physically stopped him in his tracks. "You will remain where you are, officer. Your non-intervention has been noted and will be part of my report." Vic froze, realizing his complicity had just been officially recorded. The courtroom began to buzz with frantic, panicked energy. The judge, who had been in his chambers, was alerted and appeared at the door, his face a mixture of confusion and alarm. A court clerk was already on the phone, her voice a hushed, urgent whisper. Nia was the calm center of the storm she had created. She turned to the stunned court clerk. "I need this courtroom sealed. No one enters or leaves. I want all security camera footage from this room and the adjacent hallways for the past 48 hours. And I want Officer Bryson Hale's complete personnel file, including all prior complaints and disciplinary actions, on my desk. You have 5 minutes." It was not a request. It was an order. The clerk, wide-eyed, simply nodded and scurried off to comply. The machinery of justice, which Hale had so arrogantly believed he controlled, was now being turned against him with terrifying speed and efficiency. Dr. Nia Hayes was no longer just a woman in a red blazer, she was the system itself, awakened and unyielding. The hunt had begun, and the predator was now the prey. Within 10 minutes, the courtroom looked less like a hall of justice and more like a federal crime scene. 2 sober-faced FBI agents, a man and a woman in dark suits, had arrived and were speaking quietly with Nia. Officer Hale stood isolated near the wall, his former partner Vic keeping a careful distance. The bravado and arrogance had drained out of him, leaving behind a hollow, terrified shell of a man. He was formally escorted out of the room, not by his friends in the police force, but by the federal agents who now held his fate in their hands. Nia's investigation was swift and ruthless. As she had suspected, Hale's personnel file was a roadmap of bigotry and abuse. It was littered with minor complaints that had been dismissed, use-of-force incidents that had been justified with boilerplate language, and a clear, undeniable pattern of targeting minority individuals, particularly black women, for disciplinary action. His reign of terror in that courtroom had been an open secret, protected by a thin blue line of complicity and the apathy of the system. But that system had just run headfirst into Dr. Nia Hayes. Her official report, filed within 24 hours, was a scathing indictment not only of Hale but of the culture that enabled him. It sent shockwaves through the district. An emergency review of all courthouse security protocols was launched. Officer Vic was suspended for his failure to intervene, and his testimony became a key piece of evidence against his former partner. The story you've just heard is a stark reminder that true authority is not found in a uniform or a loud voice, but in the unshakable courage to stand for what is right. It's about what happens when unchecked prejudice collides with unforeseen power. Have you ever witnessed an abuse of power, big or small, and wished someone would do something? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We ask that you please comment with respect for everyone's perspective. If you believe that justice should be blind to race, gender, and appearance, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of empowerment and satisfying karma. And share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the most powerful.